we pride ourselves on fan experience and creating something where people walk away from the Cotton Bowl and feel really good and proud to be a fan of Dallas Trinity FC.
So I guess before we, dive deep into the team and everything, where did your love of soccer, of sports, get its start?
Yeah, it's, I think as you'll find, many of these things relate back to family. And yeah, at its core, I mean, we're a family of sports fanatics. My mom and dad are a big part of that. I mean, I have so many memories I cherish of being in the front yard with my dad kicking the soccer ball around, or getting out the batting tee and hitting some baseballs. And to both their credit, they created an environment where sports first and foremost was about fun. And so it was fun, competitive. I've got older siblings, so it was also a fun way to kind of rub elbows and get into it with my older brother Tripp and Dory. But we all ultimately just gravitated to soccer. At the end of the day, it's just such a fun, exciting game, and yeah, we feel so proud to be a part of the opportunity we're bringing to the city and these women that are playing for DTFC.
Yeah, where did the idea to get into ownership? Where did the idea to get into ownership come from?
I can't point to one singular reason. It was it's one of those things where you look back on and every step along the way starts to make sense. I think first and foremost, we have a love of sport, we have a love of soccer. So we've followed just the game of soccer in general, think of it just from the playing, but also the business side. So it's impossible to ignore the growth of the game globally, and then you turn your head to the US and you got the World Cup coming here in 2026, hopefully the Women's World Cup coming soon after that. It's impossible not to feel that momentum, feel the interest in the game, and then you turn your head to Dallas and North Texas, and you look around on any weekend, and every soccer field, every park is full of young kids playing the sport. So we felt really good about a market where, depending on the data you look at, there's more young kids that play soccer in North Texas than anywhere in the world. And so you have that foundation of just interest, knowledge, fans of the game, and then you have this opportunity gap of how is there no women's professional team to service, these amazing kids, these amazing young girls that are developing in the game and going off and playing in college and playing for the national team, but then ultimately if they wanted to play pro, not being able to play at home. So we felt like there was an opportunity to fill that gap. We felt like this was the right market, the right time, the right opportunity to jump at, and like I said, we feel proud to be a part of what Dallas Trinity FC is representing.
Did you feel like the foundation of interest is here?
Yes, yeah, I think that was, as we evaluated, ultimately creating this club, that was one of the first questions was, hey, can this work? Is this a market where it can work? And there have been obviously some great signals outside of us. I mentioned the World Cup. That's a huge signal. That's FIFA giving 9 games to North Texas. I don't think there's any greater signal than the governing body of our sport saying, hey, this is a market that deserves the most games of any market in the world, or in the country, better said. Well, there's multiple countries, right, playing with Mexico and Canada. So that was a great indicator. I brought up just the fact that it's impossible to live here and not hear stories of kids growing up playing soccer, and the great academies and great sort of foundational systems this market has from a youth development standpoint, and then having that translate ultimately into fans of the game. So we felt really great about, if you do it right, you have the right brand, you're playing in the right venue, you're speaking the right message, and you've got players that ultimately are your greatest salespeople, and they're getting out and demonstrating their love of the game, telling their stories. We felt like those stories would resonate in the right way, and ultimately people would start coming out and supporting the club.
Did you, was there ever any consideration to buying into the NWSL?
Certainly, yeah. I think, we really saw coming out of COVID the growth of the game, as I mentioned before, particularly on the women's side. And the NWSL at the time was the only league that was servicing the professional game at the top level, at the Division I U.S. soccer sanctioned level. So it was hard to ignore the growth of that game. It's a league that's been around, I think, since 2012. And back when we were looking at it, there were 12, maybe 14 teams at the time. And so we felt like this is something where there's a lot of room to grow. And we felt like Dallas would be a potential great fit for that. And then ultimately the opportunity came about to look at Super League and look at, hey, maybe there's some things that with this new up and coming league can take from what the NWSL has done and build upon it, and create a more player-friendly environment, align itself with the game from an international perspective, give players autonomy to kind of choose where they want to play. For us, which was so important because our backyard is North Texas. There's no better ground of talent than right here in North Texas. So being in a league where it gave the players the opportunity to choose where they wanted to play, we felt really good that if we can do a good job in investing just at home first, we could maybe create a winning product on the field.
Was the franchise buy-in, was there a substantial difference?
Yes, certainly. They've got a decade plus head start on what the Super League's building, right? But even in the last year or two, I think you're starting to see valuations grown on the NWSL side that are great indicators for the growth of women's sports, the growth of women's soccer, the growth of the environment that we're in. You look at the other league, 2 years ago, I believe Boston and Bay got their franchises just for a ticket to get in, an expansion fee of $53 million each. And now you're recently seeing Denver this year getting in for, I think, around $110 million. So
doubled.
Even in 2 years, just doubling like that. For us, we feel great that the Super Leagues come out strong. We play on a great platform. Everyone can access Peacock. We're neighbors with the Olympics, with NFL Sunday football, with the Premier League. So when you turn on Peacock on the weekends, you see Dallas-Trinity-fc next to your Manchester Uniteds, your Chelseas of the world. So those are great opportunities for our league to continue to grow its awareness, which ultimately eyeballs drive dollars, right? And so the better product that all of the clubs in the league can put on the field in the early going, the more stories that are compelling that we can tell. I think overall the health of our investment, the league's investment, our peer clubs' investments will pay off.
How much work went into, because there's a big difference between taking over an existing property and introducing an entirely new team to an audience that doesn't know the players, doesn't know the franchise, doesn't know anything about it. How much work went into branding the team?
A lot. I joke it was a labor of love, and if my siblings are watching this or our family's watching this, they'll probably be laughing too, because the brand is such an important component of what you're building. It's your entry point for if you're introducing the club to a new fan. First and foremost, what's your club's name? What are the colors? What do you represent? And so having a big family like we do, we had a whole host of different voices in the room that you kind of had to ultimately get some consensus on. But I look at the branding process as a perfect case study for the strength of diversity of thought. I'm so thankful for Modest Works. That was the brand agency we used to ultimately develop what is now Dallas-Trinity-fc. And Robert Milam at Modest Works, to his credit, brought in outside perspectives that in a lot of ways were untraditional for building a sports brand. I mean, we worked with Hans Taplin, who does By Way of Dallas, and just leaning into his knowledge of culture, what resonates from community standpoint. He brought in Jordan Rogers, who had worked at Nike for a long time, so bringing in the perspective of what do brands look to tell stories about, what resonates. And we brought in Tor Mathy, who comes from fashion and style, and thinking about how is this something that doesn't just speak to the soccer fan, but it speaks to the general audience. How can someone wear Dallas-Trinity-fc and maybe they don't come to a game, but they feel good about what that crest represents and them representing that club as well.
Yeah. When you looked into and building out your sponsors, kind of walk me through that process of reaching out and identifying the sponsors that you wanted to
I think
affiliate with.
It starts first and foremost with a mission statement of what's important to the club. For us, I mean, we use two words all the time, which is unite and inspire, and those have sort of led to three different pillars of focus. for really we're allocating our time, resource, and ultimately who we'd like to see our partners also allocate their time and resources, which is first and foremost, we're creating opportunity, particularly for women. So we want to do everything we can to continue to empower women in our local business community, empower young women to get into sport, to find opportunities, to be inspired. They're getting to see these pro women play a sport that before Dallas-Trinity-fc, they didn't have the opportunity to see a club game. Maybe every now and then the national team would come through, but to have a consistent team here, that's inspiring. That could change the trajectory of a young kid. And so we're fully aware of that, and we want to continue to kind of lean into those experiences. Second to that is on the youth side, using soccer, using Dallas-Trinity for a vehicle for change, for good, for more opportunities to lean into all the great things that comes with being on a sports team, right? You think about commitment, responsibility, discipline, sportsmanship, friendship, being a good teammate. So providing more chances and opportunities, whether it's through camps or clinics or soccer leagues or facilities, that's long-term where we would love to kind of see Dallas-Trinity-fc continue to evolve and grow. And lastly, and certainly not least, is we're in South Dallas and we're proud of it. We're at Fair Park. We're at the Cotton Bowl. It's an amazing historic venue. I can't remember the last time there was a tenant, right, at the Cotton Bowl. You think about all the great events that kind of come and go, but that's our home. And so we want to be a good neighbor to South Dallas. We want to lean into the city where we're at. We're proud to be in Dallas. And so thinking about the opportunities, again, to use the sport that we're playing, where we play, to be a vehicle for change, for good, and even just pure fun and excitement. Because at the end of the day, we want people to have fun, have an opportunity to escape. This world's crazy enough. So coming out to a match we pride ourselves on fan experience and creating something where people walk away from the Cotton Bowl and feel really good and proud to be a fan of Dallas-Trinity-fc.
Yeah. Is the Cotton Bowl a big selling point in terms of players want to play there?
Yes, massive. And you probably better said to hear it from our players themselves, right? But yes, it was, the Cotton Bowl didn't happen by accident. I'll start there because it's good to give some context on, it was so important to us, first and foremost, player health, safety, experience, playing on natural grass. Players over-index their interest in doing that just for the longevity of their career. You think about the purity of the game, the integrity of the game. The World Cup is coming into these NFL stadiums and they're putting grass in. So the top level players want to play on that. And so you kind of look at our market and stadiums that service natural grass. We have amazing facilities. You think of high school football, but a lot are synthetic turf. So that crossed off some potential venues for us. And you really think through what else could service 5,000 fans, because ultimately U.S. Soccer, for us to be part of a Division I league, have to play in a venue that can service 5,000 fans. Has grass, is accessible. We wanted to be in a place that we felt like if anyone was a fan of Dallas-Trinity-fc, they could get out to the game via public transportation, via car, walking, and so you start checking all those boxes, and the Cotton Bowl checks all those boxes. And to see the investment that the city is making in women's sports is powerful. They're certainly putting their money where their mouth is and bringing the Wings from Arlington ultimately to Dallas in a few years, and approving by unanimous decision to allow us to play at the Cotton Bowl. It speaks volumes, and so we don't take that lightly. I think we know we're certainly we know who the landlord is, and we want to be a good steward of our game, our club, what we represent, and ultimately this historic venue that we're getting the opportunity to play in.
I know you initially signed a 2-year agreement to be here in Dallas. Halfway through year one, do you anticipate staying?
Yeah. I mean, no reason to sort of change what our North Star is at the moment. We're still in early days and very encouraged by the early community engagement, fan engagement, following that we're starting to grow, and the partners that we're working with. It's great working with Fair Park. It's great working with the city. So I don't see anything that would change the course on that. Ultimately, we want to fill that venue up, which would be hard. It's 90,000 seats. And in some respects, it may be the biggest venue any women's pro team's playing in the world. And you look at a Barcelona that gets to play in their Camp Now, Spotify Camp Now Stadium, they don't get to play there all the time. So we play every game in a 90,000 seat stadium that's getting some love and care right now with the renovation. And so we're eager to see what that looks like and how that can enhance our fan experience. But ultimately, I kind of alluded to it, wherever we end up, we want it to be accessible to our fans. We want it to be a place where our players are happy and excited to play about. And so, no reason to change what we're doing now at the moment.
Do you anticipate, can you see a day down the road where there's an official corporate headquarters, there's a dedicated training facility for the team, things like that?
Yes, 100%. I think, pro sports has evolved in a lot of ways for the better, right? I got to play a little bit of pro sports. I played minor league baseball. So you get to see one end of the spectrum, right? Where minor league baseball, in a lot of ways, they don't make the experience easy because they want to motivate you to make the big leagues where you're getting the good experience, right? And we're in the big leagues. These women, this is the top level of pro soccer these women can play in our country. And so we certainly want facilities that are reflective of that. And ultimately, our partners know that, and they know that it's going to come with an investment. We don't have that yet. We're building, and I know our players are invested in what we're building. They're certainly happy with, where we're starting from, and they're aligned with the vision of where we're going. But we can't do that on our own. We need, whether it's the city of Dallas or corporate partners or financial partners to really buy into the message of what we're doing, our vision, what our core values are, and ultimately what's important to our players and providing them those facilities. So that's the long-term goal, is to do that. Yes, we would love to have that all in one place. I mean, there's a laundry list of sports teams that have done that well. I mean, you could look in this market alone to see, the Cowboys are a great example of what they built up at the Star in Frisco, and to have, the player practice facility, training, nutrition, the front office, business staff, all in one place. I think those are all things that ultimately lead to a more successful business and a more successful team on the field.
If I asked you to dream big, 10 years from now, where would you like to see Dallas Trinity be?
If it's not 90,000 people in the Cotton Bowl, a facility that's reflective of what these women deserve, ultimately what this market deserves, and that's, we would love, we're not blind to soccer-specific stadiums that have beautiful grass pitches where the fans can be on top of the action. And what's so great about professional soccer is the fans. It's the environment. You think about, European or international soccer games, you think about the noise and the jumping and the drums and the music. That's the heartbeat of the club that ultimately then guides and cheers on the fans. And it's hard to replicate that in other sports. And so we want to take pride in that unique experience, what differentiates us. We're in a crowded sports market here in North Texas, right? So we ultimately want to provide our fans with an experience they love, and certainly venue plays a big part of that. So finding a place that our players love, our fans can be close to the action, fans can get there from an accessibility standpoint, that's our North Star.
How important was the partnership with UT Southwestern?
Foundational. They really stepped up early on and believed in what we were doing. I think that they're a partner ultimately that are emblematic and representative of what I kind of alluded to in the beginning, which is finding partners that believe in your mission, your core values. They too saw an opportunity gap. They're an amazing institution, educational center, medical center, hospital system, and they've been helping with FC Dallas, which we weren't blind to. And so they had a ton of subject matter expertise in professional soccer, but it was on the men's side, right? And so to their credit, they saw an opportunity from an equity standpoint of how do we leverage now a women's professional team to think about from a research perspective, what are some of the differences between high-performing athletes, between men and women, and using our athletes and creating an environment where health and safety are first and foremost, being preventative as opposed to reactive for injuries, and to have the comfort. I know our athletes feel like they're in great hands with UT Southwestern, and it's foundational is a good word for it, because ultimately the players need to feel like they're playing in an environment where they're being treated after, and bringing a partner early on like UT Southwestern helped do that for us. And so, yeah, they played a great role in our first season.
So that you have access to their doctors, trainers, things like that?
Yes, yes. They've, like I said, it's been a great asset for us to come and partner with someone who's seen it at the highest level on the men's side, and be able to replicate some of those things, but obviously tailor some of the things that are more unique to what our athletes' needs are. But to know they've been there before, they've seen it, they've seen a lot of these injuries, or seen, better said, a lot of the ways to prevent those injuries has been a great asset for our club.
How do you promote the players? How do you get fans to know who these women are?
Yeah, it's something that we've come to find. There's no shortcuts to that. There's no amount of investment you could throw at marketing these women that could replicate in person, and being out in the community, doing the grassroots, being where our fans are. There's nothing, like I said, that can replicate that in-person interaction, and really understanding someone's story. So our players, to their credit, are so bought in to what's happening. I think it's tangible when you get to meet them, that they understand they're part of a movement. They too will tell you they can remember being a young girl, and maybe not being able to watch a women's professional game on TV, right? And now they can. So they want to be good role models, good stewards of the game. And so, after every one of our home matches, it's one of my favorite things to watch is the fact that our players stay 30, 45 minutes after a match to sign autographs, to take selfies, to be a part of this movement and effort to really show what's so great about the game, but ultimately what's so great about their investment in the game and how they can be a role model for the next generation. So, yeah, it's a big responsibility for us. I mean, can't tell you how many amazing, impactful stories each of these young women have, and so we're constantly finding the best ways to get that out, because ultimately those stories are what going to drive or draw people in.
Yeah. Does that involve, like, do you envision more camps, clinics, things like that to reach young players and their families?
Yeah, I think soccer is the foundation, right? So as you said, camps, clinics, ultimately maybe some events, tournaments, some leagues, facilities. Those are things that allow for that interaction that you just can't replicate how much or how meaningful that can be. But soccer is just one piece of the puzzle. Ultimately, these women have lives off the field as well, and so finding out what their interests are in, where they want to grow to professionally, even after the game, what matters to them from a community perspective, nonprofit perspective. Those are things that we ask of our players, because we want to put them in a position to where they can be authentic and genuine. So when we are out in the community and kind of choosing, which player may be the right fit for something like this, or even having our players drive us and say, hey, have you thought about this group or organization? They're doing some really amazing, impactful work. Allowing them a space to kind of drive where the club's going. That's the other piece of the puzzle that ultimately we want to provide a space where they feel like they can be open and find areas where they can make an impact for everyone.
What did you learn in the fall that you'll carry into the new spring season?
I could go, how much time do we have? I think ultimately I alluded to it before, that there's really no shortcut to success for this. When you're growing a club like this, personal investment of time, that's ultimately what will drive the success of this. There's no magical marketing campaign that will turn this into 90,000 people at the Cotton Bowl. This will grow really with investment in youth soccer, investment in women and young girls, investment in our local community, being where our fans are, diving into community events, community initiatives that matter, being out at soccer fields, creating experiences and clinics and things like that, creating opportunities for fans to hear our player stories. Like, that's ultimately, the biggest maybe knowledge or learning is the reinforcement that's where we need to be continuing to invest our time, because if you invest in your community, they'll reinvest in the club.
Yeah. When you look at the recent, because it was November maybe, when the players voted to unionize.
Yeah.
How does that change your business model with the team?
Hopefully not much, or I don't anticipate it changing much. And I say that not because, I say that not knowing what the players are going to ask for, right? But I feel confident that Dallas-Trinity-fc, along with our peer ownership groups, being a new league, we benefited from being able to sort of take and pick and choose and analyze what went well across sport, not just in soccer. Obviously, we have a peer league, but thinking about the environment that baseball players, football players, basketball players, WNBA players have been put in, things that those unions have put on the table as these are important to our athletes. And so we were very cognizant of that going in, as we thought about just the infrastructure of the league, but also the infrastructure that at a minimum all of our clubs would provide to our players. And I feel confident that our players would tell you that they've been thrust and bought into an environment that they feel safe, they feel provided for, they feel valued. And so if you're getting those things right, I can't imagine a world where there's too much of a delta between the two sides. But ultimately, that's their their freedom to unionize and fight for whatever ultimately they want to fight for. But we'll be, ultimately we have that sort of value system in place that we feel confident that our players align with.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to ask about was with in terms of the players themselves in the league, for the casual fan who's not well versed with women's professional soccer, the casual fan is maybe coming from okay, there's a very specific free agency period, there's an order to the draft, there's a hard salary cap.
Right.
How does this league differ?
It breaks from a lot of the norms when you think of an American or North American sports league. So first and foremost, no draft, which players love, right? If you're coming out of college or coming out of high school even, because there's some great academy players, they have full autonomy over going from club to club, getting to see what may be the best environment, best fit for them, which ultimately I think creates for a better product because the players are happy. They feel like maybe they weren't forced into a situation that wasn't ultimately preferred from their end. So that's one thing, is there's no draft. The other is we pivoted from the MLS and the NWSL on the soccer side, which have historically been a spring to fall sport, so the bulk and heart of their seasons in the summer. We aligned ourselves with what the rest of the world does. So if you think about English Premier League or a league like that, they start late August and they run through the spring. The summer is typically carved out for international play, and the winter months same. So it allows our players who have the ability to play for their international clubs to not feel like they're missing out on their league play or even getting overused or overworked. And so it allows for a better environment from just a rest recovery standpoint, but also really encouraging our players to lean into their home countries to play internationally. And then from a standpoint of just growing the club across the globe, we align with transfer windows. We align with where we've got now I think 7 international players, and that in itself is emblematic of our league's ability to position as a place where this is great for if a player wants to get loaned here or ultimately play here. You're seeing the system, you're seeing how the Super League wanted to position itself come to life.
Yeah. That sort of brings me around to another question. I mean, where do the players come from?
All over, and ultimately, it's like I said before, it's our job to kind of tell their stories, and I hope they get the chance and they get the platform to genuinely do that. You'll find we do have, I think it's close to 10 players now that have some tie to North Texas, which is so amazing to see, that opportunity gap, right, filled. So whether it's that they played at SMU or TCU, or we've got players from Prosper, we've got players from Rowlett, we've got players from Frisco, we've got players from Arlington, that grew up here playing youth soccer in Dallas-Fort Worth, developed, committed to the game, went off and played college, and then for a lot of them, you'll hear they went and played in countries they never thought they'd play in, whether it's Iceland or France or Sweden or Finland, and now with the team back in Dallas, they were motivated to come home. So you complement the local talent with 7 international players, so some from Finland, Costa Rica, Sweden, and then a group of players that are mostly American that are emblematic of the growth of women's soccer, where their stories are likewise, where they had to play in Australia, all these other countries, because there weren't enough opportunities in their home country. And so with Super League coming in with 8 more clubs, that was, what's the math? 160, 200 new open roster spots. And so a lot of players coming back and getting to play back in their home country.
Yeah. When you look at, when you look at the WNBA's trajectory in women's pro basketball and sort of that slow push, slogging along for years until, you get this confluence of events that just sort of send it to the stratosphere. When you look at women's basketball, do you see something similar happening with women's soccer?
Yeah, it's hard to ignore the parallels, and certainly we want to build off of what the WNBA is growing, building, executing upon. I think in some respects, there's a cultural shift there too, right? So I think you're seeing a more willingness for just the avid or even casual sports fan to lean into women's sports. I think, I may get this wrong, but I think the women's college basketball final was perhaps, it was certainly more viewed than the men's college basketball final, and maybe more viewed than a whole host of other major men's sports. And I just bring that up as one piece of evidence where you have fans that ultimately, if the product's right, the stories are great. The WNBA's done that great, right? With Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and some of the younger talent, of giving them a platform to tell their stories, which then ultimately drives interest into how they're playing on the court. And so they've done a phenomenal job of that. And we're certainly going to try and replicate some of that. But ultimately, we're in a much better environment than we were 5, even 10 years ago for women's sports. The health of the investment from the corporate side, the health from the media side. I mean, you're seeing platforms like an ESPN, ABC, Amazon, Netflix, even Peacock, for where we're playing from, invest in giving a platform to women's sports and allowing people to access and watch the game, which helps long-term grow the interest and grow the audience.
And with the way that marketing's sort of been flipped on its head a little bit in the past 5 years, maybe even 10 years, but how much do your players, when you look at your players and you look at the team, how much does their own self-marketing play into the strength of the team in the league in terms of what they're doing on social media themselves?
Yeah, it's the modern athlete, right? The great, for all the pros and cons of social media, one of the great things is it certainly gives athletes a platform. They don't necessarily need the club in some respects if they're wanting to get their side of the story, their what's important to them out there. And so we encourage all of our players to do that, leverage the platforms they have to tell the stories that are important to them. And so it's a great vehicle for us to give them the resources to do that. And we've got social media team here, marketing team, PR teams that are always willing to leave give guidance, give lessons, educate on how they can continue to grow their own brands, because ultimately, I mean, you see this in the NBA. They do it perhaps to the best of any league. It's a league of stars. And fans follow players almost more than teams now, and they'll follow that player from a certain team. There's less and less allegiances to the teams themselves, and so and that interest drives and rises the tide for all boats. And so that's, we're in a position where as a club we just want to provide the resource and network for our players to be able to do that.
And let's you touched on the World Cup a little bit. Where are the opportunities leading up into the World Cup for the team to, I guess what I'm trying to say is, with the World Cup coming next year, with all this attention building up to the World Cup, where's the opportunity to really position Dallas Trinity and put it out there for more people to see?
Yeah, first and foremost, soccer, the beautiful game, will be in front of everyone and top of mind for everyone, particularly locally here with 9 clubs. And so there's one side of the coin where we certainly want to take advantage of that and reintroduce folks. Maybe they've seen a national team play or leaned in and went to a game or saw the fervent nature of just the national teams that come here and have watch parties, and just the nature of what the pride, the emotion that the game can bring out, and then continue that even after the World Cup leaves to say, hey, if you liked that, come out to the Cotton Bowl and watch these women play, because it's the same game. Our fans feel the same way about them that you just saw in the World Cup. So yeah, there's an audience, there's an engagement, there's an opportunity to grow our reach and our impact. But the other side is infrastructure, facility. I mean, we're actively talking with the city about what's the legacy that's left for this? What's the legacy for the girls' game, for youth on the youth side, and
after the World Cup.
After the World Cup, and there's still a bid process to be had for the Women's World Cup, and we're certainly advocating with folks like Monica Paul to have Dallas throw their hat in that conversation, because it would just be great to have you have the men's game and just the massive nature of that, and then I think it's 5-6 years later to potentially have the women's game, and for everyone to see and feel the growth on the women's side as well would be an amazing opportunity.
Let's talk about the possibility of the Women's World Cup. Will summer 2026 be sort of a proof of concept to put that out there?
I think so. Yeah, I think every time any market has the ability to host an event, certainly of this magnitude, they want to put their best foot forward. And I know our host committee here in Dallas, Fort Worth is doing that, and Monica and Dan and the rest of that group have done an amazing job. I mean, they should be very, very proud of 9 games. You hear potential of International Broadcast Center. Dallas will be the backdrop of the most popular sporting event in the world, and that is something to be incredibly proud of. So if Dallas does that right, you would hope that maybe could be leveraged, and the proof of concept could be there to say, hey, 2031, we've done it right. Maybe we've even learned some things to improve upon. Can we replicate this again for the women's side?
Would you love to see the Women's World Cup come here as well?
Yeah, I think that's an easy one, right? But I mean, obviously our club would love to see it, our players would love to see it, but I think first and foremost our fans would love to see it, and love to see their investment in the sport, in the game, in our club, and an opportunity to kind of show that then to the rest of the world would be an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, and you had mentioned something, what a lot of people may not realize, if Dallas is awarded that IBC, you had mentioned just the time, even before the World Cup, that you would start to see those changes and people coming in and like that. I mean, what sort of impact could getting that IBC, if Dallas gets the IBC, what sort of impact will people see?
Yeah, it's for anyone that's watched the World Cup before, they know the games are just one component of it. The coverage is a whole animal in itself, and if all that coverage is turned its attention to Dallas, and Dallas is the backdrop of that, and you think about the analysts, just the subject matter expertise of the soccer knowledge. We would love to be able to lean into that and have people get to see what we're building with Dallas-Trinity-fc and come in and improve and make for a better environment for the long term for our players. But I'm just so encouraged for what that even means for our Metroplex, what it means for the local businesses, the small businesses, not just in downtown Dallas or wherever it may be, but the whole Metroplex, because we're going to be home to countless base camps where international clubs will be based here and then go off and play their matches, and to think that may drive interest in visitors and traffic to other parts of our Metroplex and give our whole community an opportunity to show off what's so great. I mean, we started with talking about the brand, and one of the most gratifying, or maybe gratifying is not the right word for it, but one of the most interesting components of building a brand was to think and take a step back of like, what makes Dallas so great, or what makes DFW so great, and it's the diversity. I mean, you could be in mid-cities, you could be in Lakewood, you could be in North Dallas or Frisco or Arlington or Mansfield, and you would have a completely different experience than in a different neighborhood, right? And you'd hear the community stories and what makes that neighborhood so great. And so we ultimately wanted to build a brand that unified all those things. I mean, we used Trinity. Trinity was because this river, it comes from Fort Worth. You have the forks that are kind of north of Dallas, and they all sort of convene around, I hate to say it, Fair Park maybe. But that's such an incredible message to have that be the core of our club, and to get to show that off to the rest of the world, and have our community benefit from the interest and people coming here. I'm so excited about that, and so excited that we'll be a component of all of that.
Because you mentioned that if you get that center, you get these crews coming in well before the World Cup, and then you start to get some of the sidebar pieces. You'd start to do stories to sort of drive that interest leading up to the actual matches.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I mean, the World Cup, I think it's about a month and a half, or be in the summer of 26, but there's so much prep that goes in prior to. And so these crews, all of these media, the media from around the world will be here trying to first settle themselves on stable ground so that they're ready for when the World Cup comes, that they've got the opportunity to do the best job that they're sort of contracted to do, for lack of a better term. But it's an opportunity for us to really lean into that, to show the growth of the women's game, the growth of the sport in the U.S. I think a lot of the world probably doesn't really appreciate enough of how much our country's invested in the game. They certainly see it with our women's national team. I mean, there's been inarguably no better national team across men's and women's than our women's national team. So they see it from that side, but to see how much the game's growing at the grassroots level, at the youth level, and now at the pro level in a market like Dallas, we're excited about being able to tell that story to the rest of the world.
And will the World Cup be an opportunity as well to showcase some of the international players on Trinity?
Definitely. And my hope is that those players don't just tell the story about how they play on the field, but what's important to them about where they're now living. I would love a world where our players are taking, these international broadcast partners around our community and saying, hey, that's where I get coffee. That's my favorite shop over there. That's where I like to go when I like to decompress, or that's a store owner that you have to go hear their story. And so I would love our players to be a shepherd in all of that, and be a part of what will make this market so great for 9 games.
How do you strike that balance between getting partnerships that will financially help the club, while at the same time not locking yourself into a deal that, if the team and the league continues to grow, isn't?
It's certainly something that you're constantly the yin and yang of, right? But I think if you have an understanding of what's important to you, what your value system is, what your goals are, the right partners will start to become more clear and clear, and they'll make an investment and a commitment to the club and what you're doing that will make it difficult to say no or turn down. And I mean that in both respects of, you know, your for-profit partners, but also your community partners. And you know, one of the nice things about being an early stage club and growing this and starting from ground floor is immediately, you know, we had people come in and bang on our door for all the right reasons. And so we're just looking to grow that network because we've seen the early impact, and we look at our peers here in Dallas and look at the Mavs and Stars and Rangers and Cowboys and the Wings and see all the work that they've done, the great work in the community. And we're just trying to be another piece of that and hopefully help grow this thing for everyone.
Do you have you settled on a front of jersey sponsor?
No. So it's been intentional because we're looking for the right long-term partner that's willing to invest in the club. Because ultimately, particularly when you're young like we are as an organization, that investment goes right back into the players themselves, the club, the ability to grow what we're doing, creating a better fan experience, and providing resources for us to get out into the community and do all the things that we've been talking about. And so we're still waiting on that right fit. You know, happy to leave my contact information
Yeah.
after all of this. You know, we're still taking calls because, yeah, it's a really important piece that we haven't made our final decision on. And you think about soccer in particular, you know, you don't put Trinity on the front of your jersey, you have your crest, but ultimately it's that brand that you're aligning yourself with, and that brand, it's got to be the right fit. It's got to be authentic. There's got to be general or genuine alignment in mission and core values. And so Dallas
it becomes a iconic part of
it definitely
your
does.
jersey.
I mean, you think of, you know, Emirates for Arsenal, or you know, all these brands that you can associate with the biggest clubs in the world. We feel like, hey, our backyard, Dallas is not just growing on the sports side, it's growing on the business side. And so we would love for the local business community, for that partner to be part of our local business community and demonstrate, hey, our local business community is investing in women and investing in all of the things that are important to Dallas-Trinity-fc.